Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We do not want an expanding struggle.
Ever been to Love-In?
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Passing the torch. The shaping of America's new leaders. I'm Bonnie Anderson. Baby boomers now occupy the White House, most of the cabinet, half of the House of Representatives, and a quarter of the Senate. As John F. Kennedy said the last time there was such a shift in power, the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, tempered by war, but for boomers, a radically different one. A generation also disciplined by a hard and bitter peace. Yet this is a profoundly different group of men and women. The generation that once fought the establishment now is the establishment. What does this mean for the future of this nation? Well, the key to where we as a country are going lies in where we've been. Boomers' parents, known as the GI generation, were raised in war and scarcity, darkness and depression.
General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered.
With the end of World War II, America rejoiced in the bright light of hope and optimism. Celebration on the battlefield turned into procreation in the bedroom. The number of babies boomed, jumping 19% in the first year after the war, another 12% over that the following year. The nation's largest generation to date, 70 million boomers, was well on its way. It was an age of promise and prosperity, when parents vowed to make the sun shine on their victory children. And they did. Nothing was too good for their boomers. It was indeed a wonderful life. Co-authors Neil Howe and Bill Strauss have studied American generations.
They were the first babies who were raised under the Dr. Spock regimen of indulgent, permissive child-rearing. Then they were the young children in the early 50s when it appeared that science could do anything, to create a gleaming Tomorrowland for them in Disneyland, or to cure diseases like polio.
Over the next wondrous decades of accomplishment, the post-war babies grew up, touched and formed and molded by earth-shattering events, shattering illusions and some parents' hearts. The children of fast food and food for thought becoming a generation of more educated, more civil rights-minded, more accepting of women's equality, more environmentally conscious, obsessed with political correctness and ethical rectitude, but most of all, obsessed with values.
Boomers were raised not only to think, but they were also raised to feel and to feel things about justice, fairness, values, spirituality.
Giving us all a sense of new hope and limitless possibilities. That's what this new covenant is all about.
Those who know Bill Clinton say it's clear his past will have a tremendous influence on his and the world's future. From Dr. Spock babies to Mouseketeers, from hippies to yuppies to the PC policemen of the 1990s, a generation of shifting standards?
Other people look upon boomers as the most hypocritical generation, perhaps in American history. But what you have to realize is that the generation that came of age passing stern judgment on right and wrong behavior of people of other ages is still doing the same thing. They're just doing it at a different age.
25 years ago, former Black Panther leader Bobby Rush supported the use of violence to force radical social change. He served 6 months on a weapons charge and is now serving 2 years in Congress. Historians say the path generations take as a whole is predictable, based on the past. Indeed, there have been 4 other boomer-like generations in this nation's development: the Puritans, Benjamin Franklin's contemporaries, and the generations of Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt. Their life cycles were all marked by similar events, born after a great crisis or a great war, indulgently nurtured as children.
We found that in every case in American history, that kind of generation has gone on to come of age in their late teens and early 20s, to attack the institutions of their elders, the symbolic institutions of their fathers in particular, and go on to make the defining of values and culture their main life purpose and focus.
The only thing we have to fear is
Franklin Roosevelt's generation, known as the missionaries, was the most recent such group. Born after the Civil War, they were pampered as youths and well-educated. They came of age during muckraking and fundamentalism, demanding social reforms. In midlife, the missionary generation led the crackdown on drugs and alcohol. They redefined the role of women in public life, electing 19 to Congress. Only 2 women had ever served before. Later in life, they became the moral judges of other Americans.
I hope you'll vote for it.
But boomer-like generations judged their own contemporaries with equal harshness. As the first president of his generation, Bill Clinton is facing the most skepticism from boomers themselves. Indeed, in November, he polled best among people over 60 and under 24. Boomers, it appears, were afraid to trust one of their own with the most powerful job in the world.
Even among people who voted for Clinton, there was a certain anxiety about voting for someone his age, namely voting for a boomer. What will these people be like in power? And more to the point, what are they going to be like if you age this generation another 20 years? What kinds of attitudes will come to the surface?
Ahead on Passing the Torch, the death of heroes and innocents, events that help shape the leaders of today.
Duck and cover.
An iron curtain has descended across the continent. Communist Party is a minority. The entire nation should be alerted to its menace today.
Crisis is developing. Its name is Cuba.
For boomers, growing up during the Cold War meant accepting the chilling, frightening notion of mortal enemies beyond our borders and within. Still, most Americans trusted their government to make the right decision, to protect them.
Ask not what your country can do for you.
When the torch was passed to John F. Kennedy, it touched off a new era of hope and idealism. Among those profoundly inspired by this young president, a high school student named Bill Clinton, who would become the country's first post-Cold War president.
I like being compared to him in the sense of raising people's hopes and vision and making people think we can move forward again.
Indeed, hope began dimming in 1963.
Martin Luther King, 20 minutes ago, died.
5 years later, the shadows grew darker with the death of another man seen as a hero by many.
And I've seen the promised land.
The ultimate lesson of Martin Luther King's life and the final reward in death was the notion that all of us matter.
For boomers coming of age, it was also a tragic lesson that heroes die, that good does not always conquer evil. With Vietnam, many boomers were even more disillusioned, feeling government deceived and lied to its people.
I do not find it easy to send the flower of our youth, our finest young men, into battle.
Many young men, like Bill Clinton, today say they agonized over what to do. For the first time ever, a substantial portion of an American generation was debating whether all wars were just.
And 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for?
Of every 100 men eligible for the draft, only 6 saw combat. Among the rest, 2/3 say they intentionally dodged service. Some got married and had children. Others committed crimes.
All right, fellas, let's go. Move them out.
The social upheaval touched virtually everyone in some way. Yet only 10 to 15% of the youth of the day were the radicals or hippies.
We are all shaped by the times in which we live. But remember, not everyone joined the counterculture. Not everyone demonstrated, dropped out, took drugs, joined in the sexual revolution, or dodged the draft.
But those that did made the headlines and drove history. Still, it was not until protesters were killed at Kent State and Jackson State that a Gallup poll showed a majority of boomers opposed the war. For Bill Clinton, protesting and avoiding service may have cost him some votes, but it won him many others. Vietnam, says historian Neil Howe, simply did not appeal to most boomers' hearts and minds.
What appeals to boomers' natural instincts is a war of values, a war in which they can crusade for some ideal that they know is right and perhaps sacrifice for.
Which is why, he says, Clinton and many boomer members of Congress approve of sending troops to Somalia to help people live, not kill them.
The committee will come to order.
What did the president know
And when did he know it?
I have never been a quitter.
Breaking the rules, lying, and cover-ups. For a generation obsessed with values, Watergate, for many, inspired even deeper mistrust in government. Indeed, it was the investigative work of two boomer journalists that prompted Richard Nixon's resignation. For Bill Clinton, that means an open and accountable administration. A generation leads the fight for equality when passing the torch continues.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude 4200. Houston, you're go for landing, over.
It's one small step for man.
Boomers came of age during an age of widening horizons, a time of journeys to outer space. And on Earth, voyages to the interior.
Had the grooviest psychedelic I've ever had.
Yeah. Many members of the Me generation tested the limits of everything and judged everyone. Though the civil rights movement was well underway, it intensified as more and more young Americans questioned the moral basis for discrimination. Hundreds of thousands, including many of today's new leaders, marched on Washington, in Alabama, in towns and cities across America. For many citizens, it was a time of inspiration.
I have a dream.
I never will forget sitting alone in my home and weeping like a little child on August the 28th, 1963, when he gave his I Have a Dream speech. Martin Luther King taught me as much as anybody, even though I never met him, about the power of words and conviction and love.
President Clinton says his civil rights instincts were awakened during his early childhood by his family's beliefs, by life in Arkansas. When he was only 11, 1,000 troops were sent to nearby Little Rock to escort and protect the first 9 black students at Central High School.
Equal pay for equal work.
Indeed, American women in the 60s and 70s did hear and learn from the cry for racial equality. And today, many feminists acknowledge the women's movement owes a debt to the civil rights movement.
I'm the holy granddaughter of women.
Yet feminists say the movement is still in its infancy. One reason, among boomers, says Steinem, there's no consensus on women's equality. Though not satisfied, movement leaders say they're encouraged by the number of women the nation's first boomer president has appointed to positions of authority.
You can't have been a person married to Hillary Clinton, I think, for all these years, when apparently she has been at least his intellectual equal, if not more, and earning more money than he was, and not understand that it's an advantage, to have the talent of the female half of the population.
The nation's diversity is better reflected in the cabinet and in other top-level policy-making positions, and as U.S. voters become more aware, more sensitive, that diversity is being seen to a greater extent in Congress, too. Still, women, more than half of the U.S. population, are only 6% of the Senate and 11% of the House of Representatives. Blacks, who make up 12% of all Americans, have 9% of the House seats, but only 1 member in the Senate. Most agree the struggle for equality and equal representation must go on, but say much of the groundwork has been laid. What will be the driving force behind boomers in government, and how will that affect this nation and the world? Ahead when Passing the Torch continues.
I will support an...
The promises were plentiful and influenced in great part by his baby boom upbringing. Among them, a more open and representative government, less costly health care, more money for education, guaranteed family leave, and stronger environmental protections.
As you think about politics in the 1990s, the first and best question is going to be, what benefits small children?
As the best educated generation, Clinton's classmates had the highest SAT scores ever. Boomers are committed to raising the smartest, most perfect children, says Strauss.
Anything that boomers think can damage the world of children is going to be frowned upon, it's going to be taxed, it's going to be regulated, it's going to be made illegal.
The differences in how boomers conduct government will be quickly evident, the experts say.
Typical boomer approach is say, look, let's face it, we don't have the resources. There's some people we cannot help, and there's some people we can. It's a no pain, no gain approach.
Yet if they're like the 4 previous boomer-like generations in this nation's history, their greatest contributions will be far in the future.
There's something about this type of generation, born after a great crisis, coming of age, attacking parents, reaching midlife as moral arbiters, that when they get old, they're the priest warriors who push America into and through the next great crisis in its history.
The most boomer-like generation in American history, historians say, was Abraham Lincoln's. Indulged by early 19th century standards, they were the ones who in the 1820s and 1830s launched spiritual movements and attacked their elders' values on everything from abolition to alcohol. In their older years, they led the country into and through a great crisis, the Civil War.
They created the largest apocalypse, the most destructive combination of science and spiritualism that the country was capable of having then. If there had been nuclear powers in the North and the South, you better believe that there would have been no Richmond and no Washington standing in 1865.
Whatever crisis is in store for boomer leaders, the authors say if the past holds true, it will far outshadow everything they do during their first years at the helm.
Don't expect a lot to happen in practical policy making early on in their tenure at power. And early on, what they'll be interested in is fighting the culture wars, getting their values straight.
Particularly among themselves. Boomer-like generations, the historians say, are intolerant of people with different values, even other boomers. They often split into groups with different moral crusades, different ideologies. Yet they're all driven by the same force, values, and that makes them typical boomers.
Our basic understanding of what constitutes good government and a good society is very different from that of the boomers who lead the other party.
What they both have in common is the fixation on symbols matter. Who wins in the Dan Quayle versus Murphy Brown debate? That will decide the fate of the nation. And other generations look at that and they think, what are those guys doing?
What boomers are doing is trying to change America, improve the country the only way they learned how when they grew up, by stressing values. It won't be an easy time for this nation if the past holds true. There will be harsh judgments and bitter battles as this generation once again tries to impose its will on others. But as the torch is passed, one thing boomers in power won't be is dull. Bonnie Anderson, CNN, Washington.
We have heard the trumpets. We have changed the guard. And now, each in our own way, and with God's help, we must answer the call.